Our sorry State of the Union calls for a state of inebriation. So here's a drinking game for the president's address tomorrow. Every time he says folks, drink. Every time he says fair share, drink. Every time he says extraordinary, drink. Every time he brags about working tirelessly, drink. When he frets about lack of compromise, drink. If he says bring me a bill and I'll sign it, drink. When he brings up the middle class, the people he's ruining, drink. Every time he says it's the right thing to do, drink. Every time he cites someone that his policies have helped, drink. If she's in the audience, drink some more. Every time he says, I never said it would be easy, drink. If he says that after mentioning Obamacare, drink again. If he says Obamacare's rough start was worth it, drink. And every time he reminds us that running a country is really hard, say, yeah, we can tell, and drink. Each time he mentions an economic recovery no one has seen, drink. Seriously, the only shovel-ready job he has created was speechwriter. And when he says it won't happen overnight, drink one more. And when he says, make no mistake, let me be clear, and there are those who disagree, drink, drink, drink. Every time he says we can do better, as he fails at everything, or we are better than that, drink. Which reminds me, what's with all the we's? It's you up there, not us. Finally, each time you feel like you're being screwed, drink. And if you still buy anything from this gas bag, then you deserve the world's worst hangover. And enjoy it, because you built that.
After all that, they'll be too drunk to listen to it.
The whole point is to be drunk and happy, as opposed to sober and miserable.
And listening.
What do you expect tomorrow, KG?
I think it would be easier and less exhausting exercise if you just set up an IV, because based on what you said, people will be drinking the entire time. So if you would like to substitute that for water or a healthy beverage, you can do so as well. Look, I don't think there's going to be much surprises. If there are, I'll be happy to talk about them, but I think we're going to hear more of his economic failed policies and how we're going to need to redistribute wealth and how we need to help everybody else, and which basically is not going to be good for the economy. Let's see. We've already had an indication of what direction he's going in, and this is his last term, so he's going to do whatever he wants.
Bob, the goal here is to pivot away from things he doesn't want to talk about to things he wants to talk about.
Well,
right?
It's interesting. Income inequality. I just read the Dana gave me the battleground poll, which is the one of the key states that matter in presidential politics. Income inequality was number one. That's the good news for Obama. The bad news is the solution to income inequality was lowering taxes, lowering regulations, about 50%, and about 50% saying tax wealthier people. So that, and among those people who said that you ought to do away with taxes and regulation were a lot of his base, and young people particularly. So it's a sort of a two-edged sword. But every time I've seen Obama in a corner, every time, like Bill Clinton, he seems to rise above it, and he'll give a great speech, and there'll be a lot of applause, and I think his numbers will go up. His numbers already went up a couple of points. I don't know on the basis of what, but
thank you for that honest statement.
But I think that he has a tendency to do well in State of the Union. And people walk away and say, God, that's why people still like him.
Well, because he's likable. And
yeah, he is. His job ratings are.
And he's really good at reading the teleprompter.
Oh, it's not just teleprompter.
Well, that's why he's so likable, is when it's a prepared speech. May I jump in?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so the big soundbite everyone's talking about is President Obama has now said over the last couple of days, I have a pen and I have a phone, meaning I'm going to use the executive pen, the executive order, to get what he wants done in the last 3 or so years of his presidency. The problem is we have a Constitution. Nice try. You'll be able to do some things. You're not going to be able to get to the checkbook. If Congress says smart and has some teeth, they'll make sure he doesn't do everything he wants to do. Here's the things. We're going to hear about income inequality. We'll hear about immigration. We're going to hear about what we need to do in education. We're going to hear all that stuff. But what you won't hear, and I think it's kind of interesting. Now, let me just be clear that the Republican National Committee put out this list of things, State of the Union by the numbers. You're not going to hear about the $17.3 trillion in current national debt. You're not going to hear about the $1 trillion that students are holding, student debt, total student debt, the 47.6 million Americans on food stamps and poverty, and things like this one. The decline in the median household income since President Obama became president, down almost $4,000. So if things are so great, State of the Union, if things are so great, why are all these things happening that aren't so great?
Yeah, exactly. Dana, at this point, though, aren't these speeches kind of by the numbers gruel? I mean, it's rhetorical Ambien. We all know what we're going to get. are people really listening?
So the State of the Union takes about 5 months to put together, because what happens is in the summertime you start getting requests from all the cabinet agencies saying what they want for their priorities, and actually you have the budget process has to track the State of the Union process. So they've been working on it a long time. I think it is significant that President Obama's been talking about income inequality so much, but recently they telegraphed that they're changing income inequality for the word opportunity. Opportunity is the word that Republicans have been using. So as the owner of the bully pulpit temporarily, then he will be able to try to turn that around and say that what he wants to create for people is the opportunity to move up and down the ladder. The phone and the pen piece, I thought Keith Hennessy out at Stanford had a good point today. He said it's more like an erasable pencil, because with the U.S. District Court that continues to thwart President Obama on some of the major things, like the National Labor Relations Board, and most recently the Supreme Court over the weekend on the Little Sisters of the Poor, the president's staying power for what he says he wants to do, even as small ball as it is, all of those things could actually get overturned as well. They've telegraphed so much that they don't need Congress. I actually think that he could have done the thing that is only required by the Constitution, which is to periodically report to the Congress. He could have just sent him a letter, like sent him the memo that Dan Pfeiffer put out, and leave it at that. Because if he doesn't need the Congress, then what's the point of going up there? Just to give a political speech?
Yeah, so why is he doing it?
Well, I mean,
because it's tradition. I think that it's just become
First of all, it's not inconsequential. He signed an executive order that allowed 800,000 undocumented workers to stay here, number one, and Congress did not challenge that. What's going to happen, I think, the storyline after tomorrow night is courts will be very busy looking at what it is that he can, in fact, do by executive order, and there's going to be a lot of it. And he's going to start it right away.
But he already said that he was going to do this executive order thing last year.
No, but I understand the Justice Department and the White House counsel have come up with a list of things that they think on the margins he can get away with. And if I were him, I'd do it right to the edge.
How bold and how accomplished. I mean, what skill does it take to actually not try to work and persuade? I mean, the State of the Union is a place where you
persuade right-wing
But also, what about
Congress.
arrogance? What arrogogance? I mean, that's the whole thing.
What is arrogant about not listening to a bunch of
how about being bipartisan? How about
of non-educated electors who in the Tea Party that refuse to do anything?
But Bob, wait.
Non-educated.
Non-educated on the ways of Washington.
Okay, but the Tea Party, the reason why they rose to power is because they read about the issues and they got angry, right?
Yeah,
as opposed to the Obama voter that doesn't read about what's going on, but they just like the guy.
Besides the far-right ideas they have, even Paul Ryan's getting tired of them, why can't they come up with some ideas that maybe, just maybe, will move the ball forward? They don't do that. Their entire idea is to defeat O'Donnell. What is it?
You just
it's actually not true.
Name me a Tea Party initiative.
I don't need to make... I'm not worried about the Tea Party per se. I'm as the Republicans and opposition. And you will see Kathy McMorris Rogers, a congresswoman from Washington State, is going to give the response to President Obama. She is a measured, reasonable person with actual experience, mother of three, who is going to be able to say, we're willing to meet you halfway, Mr. President, but here's the things that America wants. This is what we think would be good for America. For example, on the tax code, corporate tax code. The Democrats come in at 25%. Republicans come in at 28%. You're telling me that President Obama is so inept in dealing with Congress, he couldn't actually get a deal done between 28 and 25%?
I would reverse it and say, as the Republican Congress, and if they couldn't go to 26%.
All right, I want to get to this. This is Ted Cruz, as you know, had asked the president to apologize.
We have to show him
yes, we do, Bob, because it upsets you. And you'll have time to respond. And this will be, we're also going to talk about Jay Carney saying that no matter how badly Obamacare has fared, it's all worth it.
Will it have been worth it if you lose the Senate? I mean, you already lost the House because of the health care law.
I'll tell you what.
Will it have been worth it politically?
Expanding access to quality and affordable health insurance to millions of Americans, reducing the growth in health care costs, which is happening.
Would it have been worth it if you lose the Senate? That's a simple...
This is not about politics. So the answer is, it is absolutely worth it, no matter what happens
even if you lose the Senate.
For the State of the Union, one of the things President Obama really ought to do is look in the TV camera and say to the over 5 million Americans all across this country who've had their health insurance canceled because of Obamacare, to look in the camera and say, I'm sorry.
Okay, Kimberly.
Don't.
No, I won't ask that question.
Okay.
Do you find it a little, it's more of a stunt to ask the president to apologize? Because you know he's not going to apologize.
But it's a call for action. It's saying, listen, we feel that you should make an apology about this, or you should. I think personally he should address Obamacare and the failure that it's been thus far, because he made pretty specific, astounding promises to the American people that were flat out one might call them lies, disingenuous, not well thought out, that's for sure. And I think he owes an apology to the American people. I think that would go a long way for people to say, okay,